Hello, my lovely anatomists and physiologists. Michele Glass here, and we are in the last of our chapter 14.1 videos, and we're talking here about accommodation. And accommodation is just talking about the change in lens shape to focus light. I'm going to say on the retina. So this is my particular definition. So what we're talking about is when we're looking at an object, whether we're looking at it far away from us or close up to ourselves, our lens is dynamic. Our lens is changing shape so that the wavelength of light will hit at the right place. And if we're looking directly at something, we would like that wavelength of light to hit directly at that fovea, because remember, that's our highest acuity, our best vision. And so when we're looking directly at something, we want the wavelengths of light to hit there so that we can see that very clearly. When we talk about accommodation, then there's a couple of pieces of background information that we need. So let's start over here in the corner where I have this image of a handrail attached to rock, and you see it first outside of the water, and then you see it extending into the water. And when you see it cross that point from air to water, it looks like it bends, but it doesn't. So what we're seeing here is that light refracts. And that just is a fancy way of saying it bends based on different type of media. So if it's going through water, if it's going through air, when it's going through the different parts of the eyeball. Remember, it's going through aqueous humor, it's going through your lens, it's going through vitreous humor. So there's going to be some bending that's naturally happening with those wavelengths of light as they go through. And so this matters to us because if it bends and it becomes too short, it doesn't hit our fovea and we don't get a focused image. If it doesn't bend enough and it's like too long, then it doesn't hit our fovea and we don't get a focused image. So that's what we're talking about with accommodation. The other sort of background piece of information to pick up is that ciliary muscle or ciliary body. And remember, it's holding the lens. So here in the center of this image, we have our lens. And then surrounding this, we have our ciliary muscle. And this is an image that I've taken from Google. And so you do see some slightly different terms that are used here. Remember, our anatomical structures actually end up with lots of names, and we change those names, but we don't always forget the old names that we've used in the past, right? So here we're seeing the lens is surrounded by the ciliary muscle, which is a circular muscle. And then we see attaching the muscle to the lens, we have what are called suspensory ligaments or ciliary zonules. Ciliary zonules. And so these are the connective tissues attaching the muscle to the lens. Okay. These are the connective tissues attaching the muscle to the lens. So here's what we should know about this muscle. When you contract, so here's our ciliary muscle. It's a circular muscle. So when you contract the muscle, so take your hand and make a circle and then contract it. So make your circle smaller, right? So when you contract a circular muscle, you decrease your diameter. So in this case, that means you're going to get closer to the lens, meaning the muscle is closer to the lens. So the opposite of all this would be true if you relax the muscle. So now take your hand and make like a big circle with your hand. It's nice and relaxed. You have a big circle. So you have a higher diameter. And that means you're further from the lens. That muscle is. Now remember, you have suspensory zonules. I just combined two different names, didn't I? You have suspensory ligaments, which is what I learned, or you have ciliary zonules. Same structure, different names, right? So you have these connective attachments. Maybe think of them as threads or wires or something along those lines, right? So take your hand, make that circle, contract your ciliary muscle with your hand, right? We said the muscle's getting closer to the lens. So if you had strings, I like to imagine my ciliary zonules as strings. If I had strings connecting my lens to my ciliary muscle and my muscle gets really close to my lens, my strings get like real loose. So here I'm going to say my ciliary zonule is going to be loose, loosey-goosey. Okay, now take your hand and make your circle. So this is your ciliary muscle is relaxed, far away from the lens. And imagine those strings, those ciliary zonules, they're going to be pulling tight. They're pulling tight. So my ciliary zonule is pulled tight in this case. Is everybody okay here? For me, my best analogy is in elementary school, we in gym played parachute. I don't know if y'all get to do that anymore. But when you play parachute, you're basically all holding this parachute. Parachute's like a circular piece of fabric, right? And so it's really big. And so all the kids are basically standing in a circle pulling on this parachute, right? And you do lots of different games. Like one of the fun things that you would do is everybody would move away. So you're pulling that parachute as tight as you possibly can. And then like on the count of the 3, you'd put your arms up and you'd run into the middle. And when you did that, the parachute went way up high, right? So as everybody ran in together, the parachute got really loose and went way up high, right? So that's my contraction in my ciliary muscle. Everybody's running in, the muscle's getting really close to the lens. The ciliary zonules are getting really loose. The parachute's getting really big and high. And what we're going to see in this case, is that the lens will be thick. The lens is thick. So there's not much pull on the lens. So the lens can be like nice and wide, nice and thick, right? Got it? Okay. Now we've all ran up with our parachute. It's nice and wide. So now we all have to run back and pull tight. When you run back and pull tight, then your parachute is tight and it's flat. So when that ciliary muscle is relaxed, it's far away from the lens. Those ciliary zonules are pulled really tight. And so the lens is going to be flat. Lens is flat. Okay, now this is what matters. Remember that light is refracting or bending based on basically the thickness of the medium it has to go through. So if you have a thick lens, then you get a lot of refraction. A lot of bend. If you have a thin lens, if it's flat, you get less refraction, less bend. Okay. So if you're, because water's thicker than air, right? So when the pole is going through the water, it looks like it's bending, right? Okay. Okay. If you're looking at something far away, you want those wavelengths of light to be going from the object all the way to your fovea. There's a long distance to cover. If there's a long distance to cover, you don't want to bend it. You want to stretch it out. So in the case of a long distance, you want to have a relaxed ciliary zonule. we say distant vision. So when you're looking at something far away, the ciliary muscle will be more relaxed so that your suspensory ligaments are pulling tight on the lens. The lens is nice and thin, and there's not as much refraction, there's not as much bending. And so those wavelengths are nice and long, and they hit at your fovea, and you get a nice focused image. So the opposite of that is true for close vision. If you're looking at something up close, there's not as much distance. You don't want a long wavelength. You want to bend up the wavelength so that it hits at the right place. So when you're looking at something up close, your ciliary muscle will contract. That makes that loose suspensory ligament, that makes that nice big fat thick lens. And so now as the light goes through that thick lens, it bends enough that it hits at the right place on the fovea. All right, so let me just rewrite that down here, just kind of recap. Close vision on one side, and then distant vision on the other. When you have close vision, your ciliary muscle contracts. Your ciliary zonule is relaxed. Your lens is thick. You get a lot of refraction. In the opposite case, in distant vision, your ciliary muscle is relaxed. So your ciliary zonule is tight. So your lens is thin and you have less refraction. And that, my lovely anatomists and physiologists, is the end of chapter 14.1. As always, take care of yourselves and each other.